Hello and welcome back. So in this video I will talk to you about if you are new to the AI field and if you have somewhere heard maybe there's an exciting field called the field of artificial intelligence, the machine learning, anything, maybe the generative AI, or maybe if you have used ChatGPT, and I think you are on the right track. And if you want to be AI engineer or anything, actually there are a lot of rules in the field of artificial intelligence, and this is actually a broad field. And since the release of the chat gpt or the gpt model in 2022, December 2022, and there's been a massive research that has already happened in the field of large language models or the generative AI. And I think the people who are currently who want to get into the artificial intelligence, or maybe who have heard about the AI, maybe in news or maybe on, they have seen some posters on social media, etc. So actually, there's a lot inside the field of artificial intelligence, and whenever we say something, someone has made something, so always consider it this is actually an application of the artificial intelligence. And AI itself is just like a term. And whenever you're maybe creating a small chatbot, you can name it I have created an AI, or maybe image recognition model, anything. So that will be AI. That will be your AI. So there have been a lot of people who are literally confused about how they can get into the field currently, cause and as a lot of people they're saying the agents are writing code, or maybe these large language models are writing code, maybe Claude code or the Codex or anything, or the third party tools maybe they are using or something extra. So, and they are literally confused should they go and learn about the programming, or maybe, or what to do. I have seen people, or I mean the freshers who are coming out of the high school, mostly in India. I have seen people here, and they are complaining should we learn programming to get into the AI? Actually, I want to answer this question first, and then we'll move how we can get into the AI in today's world. Actually, it's actually a vast, or I can say a vast amount of mini fields. I can say in terms of the subfields in the field of machine learning, or it's called the AI. Maybe okay, let's call it AI, anything, or the machine learning. So the first thing is if you're literally stuck, should you go and maybe learn programming and become an AI engineer, etc. So I want to answer this in simple ways, or maybe in a simple phrase. It should be do you think programming is literally needed to become an AI engineer? Do you know exactly what AI is inside, or how our computer actually works? And I think the problem to this, the solution or the answer to this question, should we learn programming to become AI engineers, etc., is do you know exactly how the computer works? And I think the answer should be computer is an calculator, and internally it just does some type of computation, and whatever you are saying the English or whatever something is rendered on your screen, everything is like a math, or I can say maybe maybe let's take an example of a small addition or the subtraction, whatever is happening inside. So what do you think what the computer is? And for myself is like a calculator, and or it's like a machine, and that understands some type of rules. And when you are you want to become an AI engineer, ask yourself can you directly ask this machine to do some stuff? And that is what the motivation of the artificial intelligence is. Maybe we can automate anything in our life, and that will be an application of the AI or the artificial intelligence. So what do you think, can you build AI without knowing how this calculator actually work? Programming is similar. You don't have to learn programming to create an AI, but you have to understand programming, because programming teaches you how to understand computer, or how computer work. So like if you want to maybe build a chat GPT type of application, you need a large language model or a small language model. And to make that small language model, you have to deal with this computer, a calculator, okay? And you need a lot of data. You need some machine that you can maybe top up run this data and maybe train some mathematical functions, or for simplicity I will like consider it as a mathematical function. So there are two things here actually. One is there is a mathematical function you have to learn. Maybe I will call mathematical function, and let's give deep neural networks name of mathematical function, or a transformer architecture a mathematical function, because everything inside the transformer or the deep neural network is actually math. And I want to be like concise here. How do you think like we can communicate with this computer or machine? And the answer should be like we can't directly communicate with it, because if you want to be AI engineer, you have to like create new AI, maybe create new applications of AI. And there are various fields how we can maybe move into AI currently. Or first let me clear like this is structured video and I'm just literally like going randomly here and there, so please understand and maybe align with my thought process whatever I'm saying here. And the answer to the question of becoming an AI engineer in today's world without learning programming. So first, answer these two questions. Can you deal with this machine, the calculator, without knowing math or without knowing how to talk to this machine? And I think there are two things that you require to communicate with it. One is math, and second is how this machine works. Okay, the machine is a calculator, and how the calculator works. Maybe there are some formulas. We give it some inputs, and it's just doing some computation internally, and it's giving us the output on screen. Okay, so similarly, programming is not like is must have for some time, or maybe for some tech stack. But tell me one thing: if tomorrow you are teaching a large language model to maybe recognize my voice, or maybe you're creating an audio, maybe like building a big audio model, and you want maybe you have an intention in your mind or goal in your mind, you want it to recognize your voice. How will you communicate with this machine? First, you need some type of rule that is machine understand. Maybe that rule is a maybe a programming language, and there are some rules in programming language how you communicate with the machine later, or maybe how you communicate with this calculator of the computer. And answer this. Programming is like you are communicating with a machine to create new machines, or the artificial machines, or the artificial intelligence. Okay, so to create the artificial intelligence, you have to somehow deal with this machine to create new AI, etc. Or to deal with AI, you have to create new AI. So the programming should be like it is necessary for something, but it is must have for something. For what? Maybe communicating with the computer. And to communicate with the computer, you need to learn its rule. And maybe that rule is programming. Let's take an example of Python. Should we learn Python to become an AI engineer? Maybe not, or maybe yes. First, let's answer like why you don't need to learn Python to become an AI engineer. See, you have to create an AI. Maybe tomorrow, what is AI? Artificial intelligence. It's just some type of machine intelligence where you play with something internally and you are maybe asking it to kind of clone the human behavior. For example, I'm a teacher. Suppose I'm a teacher and I have three students, and every day they will come to me and they will learn something. And imagine on my first day, like I want to recognize them. I want to ask them what are their names and etc. And tomorrow when they will come, or let's suppose tomorrow one of a person or one of a student calls me and he will say like, I'm not going to attend today because I have maybe some problems. or maybe I can't attend today because of some reason. So how can I recognize that voice? Like, who is this student? Is it student A, student B, student C? And similarly, if I give this problem to a machine to recognize three voices, I have to somehow deal with this machine to create or to teach this machine how to recognize these three voices. And there comes two things. First, you have to know the rule how this machine works. Maybe you know internally how it works, maybe you know math, but now how to communicate with this machine. And that is where the programming comes in. It's not you need Python, you can maybe go in any language and do the stuff what you want. It's just the entire idea is you are literally communicating with the machine. And that's it. Like, now answer my question. Like, do you need to um, literally need to learn how to code or learn programming language to become an AI engineer? And I told you maybe yes, maybe not. Now it depends on you if you want to learn it. You have to communicate with the machine, and Python is just a way to communicate with this machine to create new intelligence. And every time the people just get confused because of programming or something, even the people, maybe all the people struggle whenever they're like the new freshers and they're literally like confused how they should move in their life. And I think the answer to this is, how will you create a new intelligence if you want to become an AI engineer, artificial intelligence engineer? You need to know how to deal or how to communicate with this machine. And I'm not like directly ask you to become a AI engineer. Maybe try to become a hardware engineer and analyze how this machine works. And then try to become a software engineer to see how the software actually works or how the software communicates with the hardware. And then try to become an AI engineer. Because to become an AI engineer, you have to be a software engineer. Okay? But there is one pattern I can see in all three: hardware engineer, software engineer, or AI engineer. There is one thing common, that is engineer. You have to become an engineer. And what's the meaning of engineer? Engineer means like you think of, or maybe accidentally you came up in any problem and now you have to solve it, and the problem is critic. It is literally, I mean, you need to solve it somehow. What will you do? You will go in your mind and try to think, how should I fix this, fix this, fix this, fix this? And later on you came up with a solution and you implemented it. You failed, you again implemented, and you fail again, you implemented, and now you succeed. I think that's the meaning of engineer. What is common here? That is thinking. Programming is thinking, the math is thinking, and engineering is thinking. It's just you combine these things and you become an AI engineer. So now ask my question. Ask or maybe answer my question, I'm sorry. Do you need to learn a programming, or do you need to know how this computer works to become an AI engineer? You don't need to learn rule, but you need to think how the machine works. And that thinking will push you how to learn programming. Because to communicate with the machine, now you have to learn how it works. And how can I communicate with it, okay? So I want to like be concise here. If you want to become AI engineer or whatever, data scientist or AI research engineer or anything, there are a lot of roles in the field of artificial intelligence and you can literally touch everything. So personally, I don't want you to become a developer who can maybe design one or two HTML web pages or CSS web pages or do some styling stuff, etc. I want you to become an engineer who thinks that there is a problem and you need to have a solution to fix it. And you have to come up with a solution. How do you come up with a solution? By thinking. And I think the thinking is common here. You don't need to learn programming. You don't need to learn maths. I think you need to learn how to think, because programming teaches you how to think and math teaches you how to think. Okay, and I think all these things come together. Maybe the programming, the math, and everything. There is one thing common that is included in all these things, and that's thinking. And I think if you can become an engineer first, you can become an AI engineer, you can become a software engineer, you can become a hardware engineer. And what's the meaning of engineer? I think thinking is the meaning of engineer. Is that the meaning? Okay. Maybe there's a problem, you have to think and you're coming up with a solution. And I think what these engineers do on a daily basis doesn't matter whatever unique personality is. Say maybe if you are a software engineer or maybe an aerospace engineer, anything working in a space tech company, etc. And everywhere something is involved. Thinking is involved. Yeah, thinking is involved, bro. And if you want to become AI engineer now, you have to think. And programming is just a tool that tells you how to communicate with the computer and how the computer works. Maybe there's a calculator, some type of computation is happening inside. Maybe math will also help you there to know how it actually works internally. Okay, so I think I have like answered this question: how to become AI engineer, or should you need to learn programming language to become AI engineer? And maybe a lot of people might still say we Cloud Code is writing, Codex is writing this code, so why to learn myself? If you don't know how to think, tell me who built the Cloud or who built the Codex. Do you think they built the Cloud or Codex without thinking? No, it's not. The programming is must have right now, or it will be must have in the future. Doesn't matter if it's a Python, it could be anything, but you have to learn how the computer works. And to know how the computer works, you have to learn its knowledge, how maybe it stores, how we can communicate with it, how it talks, and maybe programming is a way to know how to communicate with a computer. And now, should we depend on the codex later or the cloud code? I don't know. Maybe you can answer yourself. And so my answer, let me answer this question: what you should do. Maybe to the freshers who are coming out of high school or maybe out of middle school, ask yourself: do you literally think you can become AI engineer without learning code? Or maybe you can automate everything using Cloud Code. If you don't know how the computer works, what is a Cloud Code? Cloud Code, maybe Cloud writes code, or maybe Codex, or maybe a simple chat GPT gives you some code snippet. What do you think? What do you think? You will understand this code without knowing how the computer works? Definitely not. So you have to like think how the computer works, and if you know how the computer works, and then if you're literally confused about the Python syntax, I don't think like it should literally kind of scare you, because if you know how to think, the programming will be like a cup of a tea, and you will exactly know the reason why the programming is there and why the maths is there and why I want to become an AI engineer. Okay, and if you can answer that why part yourself, that's the case. That's why the people begin their career and the people who lose their grip on the career. Okay, so should you know programming to become an AI engineer? I don't think you should learn programming, but you should learn how to think, how computer thinks, and how we communicate with it. And there comes Python later or any programming language, and you have to learn that language later on to communicate with the computer, and later on build more artificial intelligence applications, etc. Okay, so I hope that part is clear now. So let's move to like how we can become AI engineer now. And actually there are a lot of fields, and since the release of the chat GPT in 2022, the field has massively grown, and there are a lot of fields that came in a way and they're gone over a way. What I mean is If you go back to 2022, there were a lot of research that came. The first research, maybe it was a closed source research. The OpenAI came up with their GPT model, and then there were other labs so far, or maybe Meta came up with their Llama open weight model, and then look at the Chinese labs. Chinese labs came up with the DeepSeek, the Kimi Moonshot, the model, the open weight model, and see. And there are a lot of people also who are saying like the AI is bubble. I want to like answer this question first. Do you literally think there was a technology before the release or before the artificial intelligence? Or maybe I want to draw back it to ChatGPT's release. What do you think ChatGPT changed when it came to the market? It changed a lot, and you don't even know how much it changed. And I want to like say two things here. What do you think was before there in the world, and what after came, and why it shocked everyone in the world, and why the whole world is literally betting on it? First, let me answer the first question. I want to answer this question. Do you think like the AI is a bubble, or the people who are investing heavily in this, maybe the startups in SF or anywhere in the world who are literally betting on AI, what do you think? Are they literally mad? Yeah, they are. Mad for what? Mad for money or anything else? Maybe everyone is raising and maybe investing. Should we raise and invest, etc.? I don't think that should be an answer to this question, but let's draw. Let us go to the second question. Maybe the second question should be, what actually changed after 2022 and what was there before? Okay, let's take an example of a small object recognition. And I think before ChatGPT, there were a lot of models, and we have to just train them, maybe do some transfer learning there, and train it on our own labels, etc. And model will later on performing, etc. So what actually came? Let's take an example of the self-driving cars actually before 2022. And okay, so before 2022, the self-driving car was this big flow of engineering milestone. What was that milestone? Okay, and let's take an example how the self-driving car actually works. Maybe before ChatGPT's launch in 2022, the self-driving car was mostly based on those object detection, object recognition algorithms, and there was maybe reinforcement learning decision making happening inside the car, and the car was literally moving its steering and maybe brake pedal, etc. Or maybe it was using a big chunk of sensors around it, maybe doing some sensor fusion, or maybe creating some 3D point clouds, etc., and making some lousy decisions with the power of the reinforcement learning algorithms, etc. So, what do you think? What changed? Okay, now let's draw today's self-driving car technology. What do you think when the self-driving car says anything? Do you think it goes back to the reinforcement learning loop again, or maybe the sensor fusion stack, or the algorithm was maybe compiling that sensor data and maybe giving it a more meaningful shape? I don't think, cause there are a lot of advancements since then. What are the advancements? Maybe there are some vision-based models that are at the same time compiling those incoming images from the cameras and these maybe from LiDAR sensors or the radar sensors or the ultrasonic sensors, and maybe then there's some large language model that is continuously giving a new set of token prediction. Maybe these tokens are the next maybe the next token should be how much we have to move the steering when we are just seeing another car besides us in a 3-lane busy highway. Okay, so maybe there are some vision language action models, etc. But the thing is, what actually changed? Before it was all separated. There was some different stack for this, there was some different stack for this. Now you have this large language model that's at the same time understanding what is coming out of a camera and the sensor, and it's kind of learning the patterns inside it. Called deep neural networks are literally they're called the universal functional approximators. They can map to anything, and they will learn a lot of patterns inside the data. Or maybe let's take an example of a large language model that's trained on actions, or maybe vision action language, etc., whatever you call it. Okay, let's say an example. I have a self-driving car and I want to maybe automate it. What should I do tomorrow today? Should I maybe come up with large sensor suite, or maybe only cameras, or anything? Like, maybe let's take an example. I'm using cameras and I'm just using those architecture models that were before before the chat GPT. Or maybe I will go with the modern approach, use a large language model instead that will continuously take these images and do some reasoning top of these images and understand these images properly and make the decisions. I think I will go with the current approach because that will give me a lot of benefit. Cause have you heard this news? The Pentagon used the Anthropics models in their war in Iran. Yeah, maybe there is a system that is autonomously maybe making some new decisions, or maybe um, seeing some patterns in image, etc., and maybe they in an autonomous loop making decision what to strike, etc. So there's a lot of things that are going on in terms of making this artificial intelligence technology useful for the military purpose. But I want to answer this question: what was before and what is today there? And I think the answer to this is, since the chat GPT came, all the fields, all the engineering field, all the biomedical field, or any medical field, any business, anything in the world is literally affected by that chat GPT launch. Every business in the world is affected by that chat GPT launch. Cause before that, you were using some traditional methods, but now you have a large language model that can be trained on any type of data. Yes, you can train it on the sensor data from the self-driving car. You can train it on medical data. You can train it on, maybe you can feed your agriculture data there, and maybe you can feed anything there. You can feed how your weapons work, and the large language model will generalize to like any type of problem instance or whatever you were training it for, at least. And there are a lot of research like how we can use large language models in in the fields that the technology was never reached to. Maybe I'll take an example of I don't know why there isn't any example that's coming to my mind, but if there was a field where the technology played a very less role, and I think today that that role, or I can say, if there was something where the technology wasn't literally playing a role, maybe something that can come to your mind. But I can literally assume right now, since the ChatGPT launch, that part will also be affected by the technology, or I can say the artificial intelligence, because all the fields in the world have literally changed since then. You see anything like maybe automating a fighter jet, or maybe automating a helicopter, or maybe automating your drone delivery, etc., or maybe automating your laundry machine, or like wherever you come to home, it will automatically listen to you and maybe it will run. Or maybe let's take an example. You came back from office, or you want your entire surrounding to be automated. Maybe you have to cook and you have to do some laundry, you have to clean. Maybe you got some robotics there. Maybe you got some furniture that can automatically move, or maybe there might be some robotic device that can literally bring you food to table, etc., and you can eat wisely. And I think the answer to this is, since the ChatGPT launch, we are not like going through those traditional methods again. We have seen the power of the large language model mostly in the language part. The ChatGPT is generating text, and you can see like when ChatGPT first came, it was only understanding the human language. Then it was literally improved on safety, alignment, and all those things. It can understand PDFs. It can extract data from PDFs. It can understand your Excel files. It can understand a lot of data analysis that takes your, whole mental energy of in a day extra. But I can say like every field is affected. Why there was some traditional methods, now it's completely automated by intelligence. And now, as an AI engineer, you have to build that intelligence. How are you going to build that? And now, if you will come to, you are new to the AI field, what will you do? Should you go and maybe start from statistics, probability, and then go into the traditional machine learning? Or maybe start from the linear regression, logistic regression, this type of algorithms and do some decision making? I don't think so. Because all these traditional methods are literally replaced by the large power of the large language models. I told you like the self-driving car example I gave you before. We were using some object detection algorithm. I don't know like if people are still using those algorithms or maybe doing some transfer learning, because there are a lot of, and I think they are still being used, because I'm not literally connected with these things right now, because whatever I see, I think I see the power of large language models mostly in the understanding the language, understanding the vision, and understanding the audio, etc. And all these entities. So what you should do if you want to like start um, becoming an AI engineer today? Should you go and maybe go into the machine learning, the traditional machine learning, and learn how to supervise learning work, how to unsupervised learning works? Yes, maybe you should go, but should you learn how a random forest work? I don't think so. Why? Because I don't think you can literally cover everything to become an AI engineer currently. Because there are a lot of fields, and since the large language models came, there are a lot of new fields that emerged from that launch. And I see a lot of demand for the inference engineers or the infrastructure engineers who build this, or maybe connect the GPUs, where these researchers or the engineers later on can train these big models. Or maybe there will be someone who will be working on the alignment team. Maybe there will be someone working on the pre-training team. Maybe there will be someone who will be working on the post-training side. And I can say there are a lot of fields, and these large language models can be adopted to any domain. You can teach them anything. You can teach them how to perform well in predicting the stock. It doesn't matter if it only understands English. Because of the order aggressive fashion of the large language models, I can say like they can perform at least well in the stock prediction, etc. But the question is like how we can become AI engineer in today's world. I think to answer this question, I think you have to take your passion. You have to at least take one modality, either audio, either vision, or maybe language. Let's take an example like how you can become an AI engineer who's most of the expertise in language, or I can say the text. Okay, so for that, what you should learn. Personally, I told you like you have to think, and I think the programming will give you edge there. How to think, you will learn how to think, and you will learn how to communicate with the computer. So my first bet will be on at least learn a programming language that will teach you how to communicate with the computer and how to maybe later on write algorithms. See, like everything you're seeing, maybe in news, maybe here, there on social media, on YouTube, Like transformers, it's just a big algorithm that's working under the hood, and all these text models are maybe trained on this transformer architecture, or maybe all the models currently are trained on the transformer architecture. So what do you think this transformer architecture? This is math. This is programming. This is math. But to teach a machine how this math actually looks, you have to learn how to code it. And for that, you have to learn a programming language, maybe Python. Okay, now I think it connects properly. And now, to become an AI engineer that is mostly focused on the text modality, what you should learn? I think you should start with how the neural networks work. Then you should learn how the autoregressive fashion of text models actually work. I can directly force you to directly go to the ChatGPT side, but maybe at least start from neural networks and then move to some sequential decision making algorithms, maybe RNNs, LSTMs, and then move to the attention mechanism, how the attention mechanism works, then transform architecture, and then maybe see how these large language models are literally trained. And when you will understand how these large language models are trained, you will understand a lot. And if you are a working professional who already knows how these things work, you can imagine what are the difficulties that you found before the ChatGPT, and now how those things are automated and why the technology is literally advanced today. And I think that will give you the proper reason how you can become something or maybe become an AI engineer. Okay, let me repeat it again. What do you think? Should we learn programming? Yes, to communicate with the computer, you have to learn it. What is AI? AI is math. See, guys, I'm not going to lie. Every algorithm there is a math. And how this math works, I told you. Learn from the problem driven approach. Always consider there is some problem and there is some solution. And deep neural networks are exactly same. Transformer architecture is exactly same. There was a problem, there came a solution. And now you are learning those things. And always, whenever you learn, ask ChatGPT at least to explain those concepts exactly the same way. There was a problem, there came a solution, okay? And I hope that will literally answer you. I mean, all the doubts that you are going through in your mind. So, a little bit about me, I'm a researcher at ISC Bangalore and doing research on the reasoning models. And I think when you go to ChatGPT or Claude, you ask, maybe you ask it something, it sometimes starts thinking. And my work is mostly on that thinking. I want to learn how the large language models internally generate long reasoning traces and how good those reasoning traces are. Or maybe I want to kind of learn how this reasoning part of the large language models work. And I can teach large language models how to reason, how to think, and maybe I will go deep inside it. There's a field called the mechanistic interpretability, where we can go deep inside the architecture of a large language model and analyze how it actually behaves when we give it a prompt and it generates something at inference. So there are a lot of fields in AI. I told you, since the ChatGPT launch, the large language model boom, there are a lot of fields. Maybe you will get interested in building architectures of the large language models, or maybe you will become an inference engineer who knows how to optimize large language models. At inference means when you are asking large language model to generate anything, and when your model is at production, okay, like the ChatGPT is maybe at currently there are some black models, maybe is running on Chat or GPT 5.6. The large number of variants of previous legacy models are also there. So it's like there's a large language model who is literally giving you the output or the next word prediction or the next token prediction. That's not the next token. And whenever you are saying hi to ChatGPT generating text in a stream, one by one, and that's how the auto classification of large language models work. And to answer this question, actually, which role should I pick? And I think it will depend on your interest. There will be people who will be working on hardware, who will be like stacking a lot of GPUs together, and there will be people who will deal with the data part. They will come and clean the data set, some big chunk of data, maybe code, etc. And there will be people who will be running that data out of a transformer architecture, or maybe I will call them the pre-training stage engineers, or the engineers who are literally good at training large language models. And maybe then there will be people who will be working on improving those large language models, and then there will be people like me who will be working on how to teach LLMs how they can reason, etc. And there are a lot of fields. I think it depends on you. So from my personal perspective, to become an AI engineer in today's world, it's not like you will directly go and you are seeing some generative AI videos there, you are seeing the agents are literally automating a lot of stuff. The agents are just part of the large language model family. There was a problem the agents came and agents are solving. Agents are solely ran by a large language model. Agents are just, there's some LLM that is running on top of a harness I can say. There's an infrastructure there. There is a mechanism how a large language model can call tools, etc. And maybe do some multi-turn interactions with a large language model, I can say, because the large language model will first give you a decision to go and do some certain things, and then you will return that and ask the large language model what you observed there, and large language model itself like call the tools here and there, and it will be multi-turn interaction. Okay, the agent is nothing. Agent is just a large language model. Okay, and it has been given some other things, an environment where it can call tools, it can think. How it thinks, you have to teach large language models how to think. And what are like the multi-turn interactions? I told you like the agent is not like a large language model directly. You can give it a question and it will give you the answer. So what is actually an agent? Agent is a large language model, but it has been given some other things as well. It has been given like the kind of functionality where it can go and search the internet. Maybe it will store the context, it will store the management or the previous things it did. Maybe it will store KV cache. I'm not like directly saying it will store KV cache, but it will store the previous conversation, what it did till now, and now which tool it is calling, etc. And so I don't think like anyone who is coming to AI field should directly go and jump into agents. Agents are just built top of a large language model. Large language model needs some things to create an autonomous software that can do things autonomously. So large language model is there, and there is some other things given to it, like how it can use web search, how it can at least store the previous conversation, and whenever the agent or the large language model is going there, it's calling tools, it's coming back, and it is again going there calling tools, it is again coming back, and that's the multi-turn interaction that it does. Okay, so I don't think like I want to like understand this with a problem, because a large language model is trained and then it is at production. Now it can directly go and like access the internet. It needs access to internet. So there's a tool, maybe a Google website tool, and it's been given a power to maybe at least store the previous conversation, so it can reason better by maybe reading its previous context. And it is also given power to make decisions, like it will take this autonomous loop Or I can say, maybe let's take an example of for loop in Python. There's a for loop, and inside this for loop there is a agent, and that agent is your large language model. And you said to it, I want to see some flights from India to Washington DC. So it doesn't have access to the current knowledge. What is the price of flights? Maybe going from New Delhi to Washington DC. So what it will do? It has to somehow go there on internet and do some web search. Okay, now it has been given some access to tools. It will go and access the internet, and it will again come back and give you the results, summarize them. So there is a multi-turn interaction. And now you got what actually is literally fueling this whole agentic world. It's just a large language model given some other things that it needs to perform some tasks. That's it. And a large language model is the main thing. That's what I was telling you. What was before ChatGPT and what came after ChatGPT. After ChatGPT, the large language model came. It just needs some additional tools, some additional things in certain ways, and it can be a big thing, and it is a big thing. And all these things that the research that was happening before the ChatGPT, all is just automated by the large language models. Or I can say all the research, everything there in anywhere or any part of the world is now literally affected by the power of large language models. Because these can be implemented to everywhere. You can implement in an autonomous drone to maybe kill 100 people. What do you think? AI will go wild and do that. So what is this internally? This is just a large language model running on a GPU. And that is AI. And if you want to become that AI engineer, you have to learn how to think. It's just thinking. To communicate with the computer, you should learn how to code in Python. To become an AI engineer, you have to build a large language model. What is a large language model? It's just a math. Yeah, it's just a math. And now you have to kind of make a rule and ask computer, whenever I give you the text, I have to get the next word. What you should do? You have to go code it manually. I mean, code transform architecture yourself. I went through the details, maybe like I'm just teaching to a kid, and that is the motivation of everything. There is a problem, there is a solution. There is a problem, you have to think about the solution. The thinking is the main part. Okay, what do you think? Like, what is Cloud Code? Why do you think Cloud Code is so powerful? Excuse me. It's just a large language model who is trained on to write code. Yeah. And now it has been given this environment, a UI, you can say, a Cloud Code UI or terminal, or it has been given VS Code. And instead of human to write a code, we have a large language model that writes code, and that's it. Don't consider like Cloud Code is this big thing. It's just a large language model, and it's been given some additional things that it needs to do some certain things. That's it. And now you can see like agents are this powerful entity. It's just a large language model that's trained on to do this type of stuff. Maybe tomorrow you can train a large language model to teach it how to fly an aircraft. Yes, you can do it. Why not? Of course. Yeah, that's how the whole things actually work. Now, which fields you have to focus on? There are a lot of fields. You see the research happening in the diffusion models. You see the research happening in the model architectures. You see the research happening in the inference part, the post-training part. And you will see a lot of things. You'll see the research happening in the multimodal side. You will see research happening how to teach these large language models to drive a self-driving car, or maybe drive a car manually, or maybe autonomously. I'm sorry. Yeah. So tomorrow it will automate the Tesla, or maybe Tesla is using a large language model, and who knows? Maybe they are. And that's the power of large language model. It's not LLM. It's not only Chat GPT. There's a lot inside it. There's a transformer architecture. There is a deep neural network. And there is a thinking. There is a math. Okay? When there is a mathematics, you can solve things at scale. So I hope you got the intuition like the current state of AI and why people feel like literally misdirected or they don't have any direction how to move in their careers. Can you become an AI engineer? Of course you should. Why not? The field is literally moving and it's not a bubble. This is a real technology that solved the problem is that the humans were facing maybe from 200 300 years, and now you can't literally imagine where it will go. The research happening is at scale and is literally, uncontrollable. I don't think any country will literally stop it. And what do you think? You think the China will stop it, or the United States, the president will tomorrow go on podium in White House and ask it to stop? No, you can't. Not Sam Altman, Elon Musk, or Dario can maybe stop this. It has to happen, and it is happening. And the AI is not a big thing. It's been there from 1950, and the attention is all you need paper gave us the breakthrough, and that was later adopted in the GPT models, the generative pre-trained models by ChatGPT. And the whole was the power of that large language model. And I think it will transform anything. It will transform your game development. It will transform anything. It will transform your Excel files. Or maybe you don't have to manually go there and write formulas in Excel. It will, everything will be automated. And you can teach large language models how to automate these Excel work, or automate this Excel work, or maybe some other anything. You can name it. Just name it. And you can teach LLMs anything. Yeah. It just... the text is represented in numbers. Image is represented in numbers. Anything is represented in numbers, and there are some formulas that are there, maybe computing the attention. Yeah, so actually there's a thinking. Thinking is there. And now you have to communicate with this machine, and it understands one language, maybe Python. But you have to think how this machine thinks. And that's what programming teaches you. You have to learn programming anyhow. It doesn't matter how good code the cloud writes. You are not later on like going to write anything. Maybe you can automate anything, but you have to understand how it works. Yeah, that's the main deal. You have to think how to build things. I think that's the main cause. And I hope I have answered a lot of things. Maybe this wasn't a structured video, but I have covered things at a research level, what I think. And I think that's what the whole world thinks. And I hope you have got some mentorship from my saying. This is just like an unscripted video. I don't have anything written in front of me and I'm just dictating nothing. It's just natural conversation. And I hope if you're listening, you will understand. So Godspeed. Thank you. Have a great life. Thanks for having me here.